end of next week. Innovate Bio and this series of talks are funded by the National Science Foundation. I'm Cassandra Mitchell-Nothis, and I am from Austin Community College in Austin, Texas. Just before we begin, there's a few housekeeping announcements. Today's presentation, we only have one presentation today. If you have with a Q&A at the end, please feel free to put any questions in the chat box as we're going through. We also will have more information on the website, and I'm going to put the link in chat for everyone. That'll take you to this talk and the future talks and past talks that we've had during this series. At the end of this, there will be an evaluation survey, and I will drop the link when we go into Q&A. So if you have to drop off early, please take some time to take that survey. It helps us continue things like these and always keep them moving forward. And with that, I will introduce today's speakers. We have Dr. Quenzer. She's the PI of this project. We have Ying-Tsu and Emily and Eduardo. They'll all be talking and I'm sure introduce themselves better as we go forward. Their title of their presentation is Expanding Hands-on Biotechnology, Biomanufacturing Experiences to Engage More Students in Biosciences. And with that, I will pass it to Terri.
Great. Thank you, Cassandra. And hi, everyone. I'm glad you could join us. We're excited to talk about this project today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then let's see. Okay, good. So I'm going to put this into presentation mode. Hopefully that still works. Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and so I'd like to just...
Sorry, Terri, I don't want to interrupt you. You're not in slide sharing mode. We're seeing like the slides on the side. I'm not sure if that's how you wanted to share that today.
Wait a second. Say that again. I didn't catch it.
You're not in presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Oh, my screen sharing is paused for some reason. What is going on? I'm not sure how to unpause that. So alternatively, what I can do is we'll just go into this mode, and sorry, you'll get to see all the slides, but that's okay. You'll see them anyway. So I'll just go ahead and share. Okay, can everybody see that? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna shrink that down a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm just gonna try to expand my screen out a little. Okay, there we go. So let's go here. Okay, so I just want to say, yeah, the project team on this the expanding hands-on biotechnology and biomanufacturing experiences to grow the workforce includes Ying-Tsu, who has I have to just give a shout out to her and Josie Sede, who's not part of the presentation, but they're actually the ones who developed this whole project. And so they developed this probably almost 10 years ago now and started using this in Northern California in the Bay Area biotech programs. And Emily Quach is faculty at Laney College, as well as a co-PI on this grant. And we have a special guest on this presentation with us, Eduardo Ayala, who teaches at El Camino College, and he's implemented the Bioscope model at his college, and he's going to tell you about that. And we're very excited about that. So why is this project important? Right now, the jobs in biotech and biomanufacturing are growing, and with the tariffs that are coming and have even started, the purpose of that is to bring a lot of our manufacturing jobs home and to not outsource them overseas. Regardless of how you feel about other things, the idea is that there's going to be even more jobs. And so we need to train the workforce because there's a shortage. And we're not just talking about lab skills here. Lab skills are very important, but there's all kinds of support. In fact, in the life sciences, the multiplier is over 4 jobs outside of bench jobs that are created for every bench job in biotech. So we do have a growing workforce need, and industry needs teams and needs people to be able to work together. They have to work across departments. They have to be able to follow procedures, SOPs. They have to be able to meet deadlines. And our students need to get access to and exposure to workflows in companies in the real world. So, uh, so the gap that we noticed is that traditional biotech training focuses on the technical skills. But there's a lot more than just technical skills that are needed in industry for all the jobs that are created by the life science industry. And so the industry needs people that understand operations. They need to be able to communicate not only in their own roles, but with others. And they need project and quality management. And so these different areas, and whether you're talking about biomanufacturing or research, employment, it all applies that supplies are going to need to be purchased, inventory is going to need to be managed, there's going to be planning involved, materials need to be stored, sometimes materials need to be distributed, and there's customer service, there's customers involved. And so, and that's a workflow in any company. And manufacturing is just one part of it. And even if they're doing the manufacturing, they still need to be able to communicate with these other departments across the whole company. And that's where our project comes in. So our ultimate project goal is that we want to provide students with an experience in really how a biotech company works. And so they need to understand, from start to end, which includes raw materials all the way to the final product. So they have to know what those roles are. They have to do documentation and also be able to read the documentation, even if they're not the ones that are creating it. They have to work in teams. They have to be able to communicate. They need to be able to troubleshoot. And so our approach to this, we're not working directly with the students in this ATE project. We're working with the faculty, and we're providing professional development that helps train the faculty to be able to present these skills to their students. And so meet Bioscope. Bioscope is actually an acronym for the Bioscience Supply Chain Operations Projects for Education. And what it does is provide a framework for faculty that are teaching biotech so that they can teach the workflows, not just the technical skills and the lab bench skills, but really give students exposure to kind of the whole picture across a company, because they're going to be involved in all of these features. And so they learn to do this because they're involved in everything in the Bioscope projects that they do in the classroom. And that includes materials management. They're going to do planning, quality control, documentation. They have to read SOPs, and they have to work in teams. So now I'm going to hand this over to Ying-Tsu.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So what better way to do this project than think like a company? And in many cases, and I'm sure you have also done this, where you make a company, have the students think of a company, a biotech company, and then that's how they operate, basically. So in this company, then, students don't just do a lab, they run that biotech operation. And they take on several roles. And I want to tell you that this is how the teacher would be teaching this pedagogically. They let the students take on these roles as production team, as managers for safety, inventory, quality. So you have separate people for these roles. You have a safety manager, inventory manager, quality manager, and then you have a student coordinator or the project manager who basically oversees the whole project and understands what each of the roles are and talks with each person on the role. And this then creates an atmosphere much like how companies are run, and students see how it's run, and they get to take part in those different roles. And of course, in industry, we have to follow SOPs and batch records. So students are also learning the differences between SOPs and batch records, and they understand how to fill out batch records and documentation. And they also track production. So, you could be making thousands of a widget. You could be making hundreds of a widget. What does the customer want? How are we making these widgets? So they have to track the production to make sure that they're meeting deadlines. And of course, with their troubleshooting and communicating as a team, because as we know, the biggest soft skill that industry wants is communication and learning how to troubleshoot and critical thinking. These are all soft skills or professional skills that industry always talk about. Next slide, please. So what does that look like? Um, you know, it can be very small projects. It can be big projects. And what it is that students are, okay, so they're very flexible and they could be student-led or customer-led. And in this case here, these are two different projects. One is about making a buffer. And imagine what it takes to make a buffer like or a reagent like calcium chloride. You need to measure it out. So you want to make sure that your scale is um, validated. You want to make sure that the weighing is correct. And so you have to document that. And once the technician documents that, the verifier has to sign off on it. And then you have to possibly put it through a filter. So you want to make sure that's correctly done, document that. And then you have to aliquot it and label it, package it. So all these steps are being done to make a simple reagent like calcium chloride in this case. For plasmid extraction, and maybe in your class you're doing plasmid extractions, for bacterial transformation, for example. So what does it take to extract? You got to go through multiple steps, and then you got to QC to make sure your plasmids are what you think it is and what you hope it is. So it's a pedagogical approach to incorporating a lot of documentation, and then in the same time having communication with the team, having roles and understanding that. And then your goal then is to deliver a high quality product as a team together. Next slide, please. So Terry has already talked about this. You're building skills beyond the technical skills. And, students get a flavor of what it means to be, say, an inventory manager. Some students may not have good technical skills, or they may not like doing the technical stuff, but there's so many jobs out there that, are associated with biotechnology. That doesn't mean that you always have to work on the bench. So this project then builds those professional skills for accountability, teamwork, communication, meeting deadlines. It's an operational understanding. So it's not just about what's in front of you. It's also thinking about where do these materials come from, and where are the materials going to go after I make this product. And so you're following deadlines and of course documentation. We can't say documentation enough. Um, and then in some cases, chain of custody. I want to point out this picture here because it's a high school class, Galileo High School in San Francisco Unified. And what the teacher has done is created auditors. So this auditor is going around and asking the teams questions. So they're also bringing in a case of making it accountable, making the students know what they're doing. Next slide, please. And so how have we done this? We're trying to make it easy for teachers, to make it easy for you to implement. And so what we've created is a handbook called Bioscope 101. And we created this handbook so that you can also teach the Bioscope project. And there's a lot of projects in there, such as aliquoting, making buffers, plate pouring, plasmid extraction, even Aaron Kamajaya's Taq polymerase isolation. So those projects are all in there, and they're all editable. So, we made a template so that you can go in there and make it your own. So what does the Bioscope 101 include? It has standard operating procedures. We have batch records to help you see what a batch record is like, to help you see when you need to verify. We have team roles and job descriptions. So each one of those roles that we've talked about have job descriptions for it. And we have skills matrices as well as suggested project timelines. The other thing that we want, or we suggest that teams work on is a project charter. What is your project? How are you going to get it done? What's your budget? Right? These are all part of project management. And so it gives students an introduction to project management as well. Next slide. And Emily, I want to introduce Emily Quach from Laney College.
Thank you. So how do students respond? So from early feedback, it shows that students go through real work-life experience, what they actually see at a company. So students are given a customer invoice, and from the invoice, we have a group of students plan out what day do we need to collect the materials? When do these materials need to be made? If there's mistakes in the materials, can we go back and fix it? So there's a huge planning process. And then we have our production team. Our production team then leads into like packaging and labeling, and then we have to distribute it off to the customer by a deadline. So students really see it takes a lot of work, a lot of people to go ahead and produce a product. Students get more confident in working with different people they've never worked with. I used this project on a dual enrollment class, and this class consisted of juniors and seniors from high school. And you know, the seniors like to stay with the seniors, and the juniors like to stay siloed together. But at the end of doing this project, students were communicating, whether it's juniors, seniors, it doesn't matter anymore. They worked as a team because one table would have to connect to the safety manager or the quality manager. So everyone had to up their communication skills and be confident enough to go ahead and talk to someone. So with all this, we're just not teaching you how to pipette. We're just not teaching you how to pour plates. It's really teaching you how to be a responsible person at a workplace through our soft skills. Next slide, please. This is not just for biotech majors. So this project will help you with project coordination, documenting, key signing batch records, making sure that you're following every step in the SOP, which brings us into accountability. So students taking these, going through these projects doesn't have to be students going into just biomanufacturing companies or biotech companies. We can see them in the healthcare industry, in accounting firms. We need all these soft skills in those companies. Next slide, please. So what this project is not, it's not just another wet lab as we bring in more pieces to the project, like project management, planning, communication, making sure that you're safe and following quality to ensure that the product comes out the correct way. It's not only for advanced students. So we mix in advanced students and fresh students so that anyone can pick up the job. We might pick the advanced students to do the more planning or project management piece, but everyone can be involved by just being part of the production team to produce that product. So it is about getting students to work like an industry team. And we've used this in high school classrooms and also like intro to biotech classes. Next slide, please. So through this grant, we're able to support faculty, and we have professional development workshops for both high school faculty and community college faculty. We provide curriculum through Canvas, and this curriculum is different projects or case studies or project management documents. All our documents provided on Canvas are editable, so they're Google-based. And we also meet with the faculty to go through like community of practices each month, and we talk about different strategies different instructors are implementing. Each Bioscope project is unique, and it doesn't have to follow our Canvas projects. You can design something new or something that you would like to do with your class. A lot of times it's best led when the students make up the idea that they want to go ahead and produce that product. So along with providing like labs or projects, we also work with CAST to provide enhancements to universal design for learning that will help us to make better templates. So here we were we had our first workshop this past summer at Cerritos College, and we have Eduardo here at the bottom. He was the quality manager, and he was checking to make sure that the plates were not contaminated. And he was actually one of our first people to go ahead and do a bioscope project over this semester. So I would like to introduce Eduardo Ayala from El Camino College, and he's going to walk us through his bioscope project.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Eduardo Ayala, and I'm the lead biotechnology lead at El Camino College. We're located south of downtown in the South Bay, and this is our very first year offering biotechnology classes. Next slide, please. And big shout out to Terri, Ying-Tsu, Emily, and Josie, because one of the biggest challenges, one of the things that is really critically important for our students, our biotech students, as well as students in any biotech classes, is providing an industry like experience for them so that these students can hit the ground running on day one. Whether they get hired immediately after taking a class, completing certificates, or completing our AS, or those that are transferring on to a bachelor's and beyond. The Bioscope project really gives us a framework. And as was previously mentioned, even documents like say batch records that we can edit, we can incorporate. And also, one of the wonderful things about this experience has been the flexibility and a space that is safe to make mistakes and try different things. I attended the workshop that was just mentioned, and it was fantastic to be with professionals that are helping us, providing these tools, providing this guidance. And the workshop gave us, the technical know-how, but also was a really great environment to brainstorm ideas. Like going into this project, have didn't really have a lot of experience when it came to supply chains, but I went from thinking, oh man, the supply chain, it's this unwieldy giant beast. I may not have the expertise to do it right, to coming out of it and thinking, I've got some ideas. We discussed as a group, kicked the tires in, and then by the end of it, I was like, I think I have something that we can implement. And so our implementation took the form of a workshop for a campus-wide event called Onizuka Day. And Onizuka Day honors one of the astronauts that perished in the Challenger space shuttle tragedy in the 1980s. But this event celebrates his love of science, and so the community opens the doors to middle school, high school, community college students, and we invite them in to share this love of science and STEM. And so the biotech team put on a workshop that's centered around biotech concepts. And so for our implementation, we designed an experience that involved paper chromatography, gel electrophoresis, but our students use this as an opportunity to incorporate supply chain concepts. Next slide, please. And so the activities were activities that would be appropriate for middle school students, like say paper chromatography, doing extractions with candies, but then also introducing them to techniques that are bread and butter techniques in any biotech, any molecular biology lab. Next slide, please. And so It's centered around extracting dyes from and doing chromatography on things that students are exposed to every day. Like say candies and Skittles, and also Skittles are really colorful. And so it really lends itself to just getting cool results that the students can get excited about, our participants. Next slide, please. And so we had the students do the extractions. We set up petri dishes that the students could take home, and then from the extracts, then we had the students set up paper chromatography using a really simple salt solution. Next slide, please. And so the students are learning about chromatography, they're learning about separation, they're learning about rates of migration, and all tied to the properties of these molecules. Next slide, please. And then they get to see these cool little paper strips that are really colorful, and then opens the door to discussions about what's actually happening to these molecules, what's actually happening to the substrates. Next slide, please. And then when the students see the gels running, they're seeing this wonderful, really cool rainbow effect in gelophoresis, and the students, the participants are going, ooh, ah. And then our students have an opportunity to, tie the work that they did, the middle school students, to the extractions, paper chromatography, and then yet another separation technique, which is the gelophoresis. Next slide, please. So the big picture for this event wasn't just say Onizuka Day, where the students are doing really cool things, our participants, but we broke it out into activities, planning, brainstorming, uh, then planning with the students, getting their input, and then the actual day of implementation, and then also then lessons learned, doing a debrief with the students. So early on, coming out of the Bioscope workshop, again, I'd mentioned some ideas that I had, bounce them off my dean, and uh, I implemented some of the supply chain concepts, as lecture, um, and then we had planning sessions with the students about, brought to them, a proposal, and then had the students kick the tires on that proposal, and then heavily took their input into what this was going to be. Piloting was important so that the students could see that, yes, we could have an idea, but are some of these ideas practical? Are they doable? And then the day of activity, having the students take on the roles of, say, mentors, the hands-on activity with the students, and then student-led presentations, which I'll talk about in a bit. And then also letting the students know, hey, it's okay if things don't go perfect. It's okay if we make mistakes. We're learning from this, which then ties into the debrief, which is what worked. What did the biotech students getting their input? What worked? What didn't work? Talking about Bioscope. What is Bioscope? What's the purpose of this amazing project? And then also setting up, that discussion then sets up their participation in the survey, which I made sure that they understood that these surveys were important because these projects are there to help them, our biotech students. But these surveys are also critically important for grant reporting. And then it is how we help the Bioscope team, to make it even better. Next slide, please. So, again, one of the in-class activities was planning, and so I broke it down into, again, tying it into supply chain concepts so that the students can think about, hey, they're not just making a kit, keeping the customer first in mind. What is the customer going to get out of this? How are they going to benefit? The product itself, which takes the form of, say, a kit, but then also an experience, staffing. My biotech students took on the roles of employees, as stakeholders in this process, deadlines that we had to meet because we were up against the deadline, which is Onizuka Day. We couldn't say, we're going to delay, the implementation by a week. We couldn't. If there was no workshop, then our customers, which are the participants, uh, they're not going to be happy, and the customers are also, leadership within the school, and then we ourselves, faculty and the students themselves are their customers. We want to make sure that we meet these deadlines. Branding and marketing. So we had a discussion on that, and then the materials and the equipment that were available. So in the next slides, I'll talk about how we broke it down. So, what was the audience? Well, our students discussed that, we had potentially, students, children that were in sixth grade on up. The number of participants per session, and this is something that we as a group negotiated with leadership at the school, and it wasn't a hard negotiation, but it was, they gave us a number, and then we let them know what was possible within the space, which is an organic chemistry lab, and then also making sure that each participant got the experience, got the product that we were hoping for. And then, from the customers themselves, also making sure that we got feedback from them as part of a continuous improvement process. Next slide, please. And then we talked about the product. And so, and even this was the case for myself, in my head, I was, locked in that the product was a kit, was something that, you could handle, with your hands. And part of that product was the case. So the kits were going to take on the form of materials that were needed for candy dye extractions and then candy chromatography. But then, the larger picture was, okay, well, there are things that the students are not going to handle directly. There are things that the students are going to walk away from that's more of an experience as well. And so our product was also creating a hands-on experience, an experience that was hands-on, that they were things that they were going to take with them, but then an experience that was going to be meaningful and impactful so that they could look back on and say, wow, that interaction that they had with, the biotech students that were taking on the roles of mentors, but then also as a scientist, so the spotlight was definitely on the students. And then also lab safety considerations. Next slide, please. And so the planning, the planning phase of this took on, was really over 2 days. And the initial planning was, again, some ideas that I had. And then we had 2 classroom sessions for planning and as part of, some other lab activities. But so on the board, I sketched out what was in, a couple slides back, which was the big overview. And then we went into a class discussion. We went point by point by point. And then, I was pitching, and then they were pitching back. And when we got to lab safety, again, for me, it was important that the students have a voice in this. But when we got to the lab safety, like, it was this, I had this experience of like seeing the students, and it was wonderful taking ownership of this, and then having that aha moment of like, this is what this is about, right? Like actually seeing the students take ownership of this process and making it their own, because they were coming, we're in an OChem lab. That's where our biotech classes are held. But and I had some ideas, rather, some thoughts on, okay, well, what is appropriate for a sixth grader to be doing in an OChem lab? But they were coming up with things left and right that I hadn't even, thought about. So, age of participants is something that, I had in mind, but uh, you know, risk of eating in lab is, you have adults that you tell them don't eat in a lab, and then next thing you know, they're putting a Clif Bar in their mouth and drinking, and then, let alone children. And I won't go through each of these, but we broke it down into we both came up with ideas of like, well, what are the risks of being in a lab? And the resolutions, many of these were things that they came up that were like instinctual to them. Uh, one of and two of the big ones were allergies. My initial thought was taking these wonderful materials for paper chromatography that I have to give a lot of credit to Babek and Ying-Tsu, because that really gave us something to work around, not to work around, but to build around. But my initial thought was like, oh, we'll use a bunch of different candies, and immediately my students were like, allergies, peanuts, and manufacturing lines. And I was like, oh wow. So then we were going back and forth on, okay, well, what is candies, we like candies, but what we can work with that is safe. And the second thing is baby proofing the lab. That was the actual term that one of my students used. But to describe baby proofing, a lab that was to make it safe to not just children, but like, big kids, like college on up, their parents, making it a safe environment for them. Next slide, please. And then, we had a discussion about staffing. And so I think, I was seeking volunteers, right? So Onizuka days, they held on a Saturday. So it's not, a school day. And so one of the challenges is that I was thinking about is, well, how can I encourage biotech students to participate? So it's not just, me, trying to run this bioscope workshop that really is for, the community, but also for my biotech students experience. But I think once the students made this their own, I had a lot of volunteers, which was wonderful, because then that led into a discussion of um, an experience, a product that is being made has to have the right staffing levels. You have to have the right, you have to not have enough team members, and the number of team members and their experience is gonna dictate what that experience really is gonna look like. So I did offer some extra credit. That doesn't hurt. But I think even without the extra credit, like I had students that were volunteering into for the entire day. So we broke out the shifts as a morning shift and an afternoon shift. And also we had a discussion about the participants and what is appropriate for them to do. So our discussion, basically we landed on the students were going to do the extractions, the participants would do the extractions, paper chromatography, but then the experience dictates that, the biotech students who are, the subject matter experts and the scientists would be doing the higher level reagent handling and then the gel electrophoresis. So we broke it down into participants and biotech teams. So my students were the biotech team. Next slide, please. And then deadlines. So we had a discussion about, what are the deadlines that we're trying to meet. And I highlighted one of the issues that we ran into is that, and again, this ties into supply chain, is that you don't always get the materials that you need. But if you plan ahead, and if you create deadlines that give you, some wiggle room, this won't impact, the final day, which is, the big day for Onizuka Day. And so we ran in this into real time, and again tied into this, to the wonderful spirit of the Bioscope boot camp at Cerritos, which is like, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And so long as we have backup plans in place, and so long as we're focused on that experience, things are going to be good. So we had pilot experiments, and then the big day where students we're going to be doing everybody's going to be enjoying. Next slide, please. So we talked about branding and marketing. What are the things, this event, was Onizuka Day is not a biotech only event, but what kinds of resources could we leverage that the school was already providing? So they were, Marcom at our school does a wonderful job of promoting events. They already had a website. They were doing outreach to local schools. And then on our end, what are some of the marketing branding opportunities? Passing out business cards, flyers, word of mouth. But then one of the really cool things, again, that really made it clear that the students had made this their own, was a biotech logo sticker. Next slide, please. And so we also talked about we talked about budgeting, how much money did we have to work with that, again, would impact what that final experience was gonna be. We also talked about refrigeration and climate control, safe for the agarose gels, and then the logging of supplies as they're coming in. Next slide, please. And then ordering those supplies, what things did we have to order? What things were already in house to keep our budget low? And one of the wonderful things were the logo stickers that my students designed and then Ying-Tsu ordered for us, which was really fantastic because the students then our biotech students had a tangible had something tangible that represented, this experience. Next slide, please. And again, this is a logo that I did not prompt them. This was completely unprompted. We were talking about branding and marketing, and then by the end of the session, our students had designed a logo, which I thought was wonderful. Like I'm looking at this, and I'm getting goosebumps because the students, as we're planning, we're making this project their own, and they're getting excited. And so we had these thanks to Ying-Tsu and Babik, and we had them for our workshop. Next slide, please. So and this is another way that that came about as part of the planning process. Thinking about, again, the students are excited. How can we get them even more invested? And also one of the great things about the workshop that was highlighted for the Cerritos Bioscope workshop was, yes, this is a wonderful experience for the students, and it's for them, uh, making it their own and getting them invested. But one of the great things is that Ying-Tsu and Terri have mentioned is, how do we take some of the lift off of the instructors, off of the faculty, to give us some bandwidth to focus on other things that are also really important. And this came to mind. I was thinking, middle school students don't want to listen to me talk for 40, 50 minutes. But how about if we break down, these concepts into a series of little mini talks that are interspersed into the hands-on activities while the students are doing the extractions, we're waiting for the extractions, they're waiting for the chromatography. And then what came about was the series of lab lectures that then the students then led. And so we had assignments for the morning session and the afternoon session. You see some names are in both that were really excited and wanted to present at both sessions. And again, this is really fantastic because the students are um, they are uh, getting to showcase the knowledge that they're learning in their biotech classes. They're getting experience presenting in a low stakes environment, And then on the other hand, the participants, our middle school students on up are hearing about science or getting excited about science from scientists that are, also from biotech students that their viewpoint is look at these professionals, look at these scientists sharing these cool things. Next slide, please. And so the actual kits were the actual kits, contained, weigh boats, pipetters, chromatography paper, basically everything that was needed for the extractions paper chromatography, and then the candies that were going to be used for extractions. But as part of the kit making process, we had batch records that our students were using that as an in-class activity, building these kits. And then also incorporating the documentation of building these kits and then checking each other's work. So I had the students, they were initialing and signing and then checking each other's works and then doing QC on the kits to make sure that each of the kits had everything that they needed. And as an aside, part of the QC process I didn't even think about is that we're also including, you can see a little cute a microbe sticker in the picture to the left. The kits also included stickers. I went on Amazon and I bought a bunch of lab stickers, thinking, okay, these not even thinking about that be anything any issue with them. My students were pulling out stickers and going, hey, so there's a Bill Nye sticker and he's using an expletive to talk about how much he loves science. And I was like, yeah, okay, QC process for a win, So we rapidly went through the stickers and sorted out the ones that were not age appropriate. The ones that were not age appropriate, my students were like, "Can I keep this?" I was like, "Fantastic, have go with it." But so we took something that, again, one of my initial, concerns about this is like, man, these kits are really simple. It's like it's candy, it's we got pencils. I mean, is this really a product, worthy of a bioscope project? And A, yes, it was. And B, the documentation, these batch records, these materials that again, the bioscope team provided to us elevated it to something that really did feel like my students are getting that experience of working with the company. Next slide, please. And so in these slides, I've got pictures of my students. This is they are prepping. They got there very early, and they're prepping for the activities. Sanitizing, making gels, and getting everything that was ready. Next slide, please. And then we have, the biotech mentors, my students are in, lab coats, they're standing up. And so they were circulating among the students, making sure they were answering questions, they were keeping them on track. And then in the lower, so up at the top, this is during the activity, in between lectures. And absolutely, this is just completely student led. And then on the lower right-hand corner, we had set up stations with equipment. And so as the students are leaving, they are stopping off at the stations. They're getting to see pH meters. They're seeing PCR machines. And they were getting demos on how to use pipetters. And the students are, again, they're checking out what biotech is. And my students just immediately, instinctually knew that that was going to be something valuable for the participants. Next slide, please. And then these are pictures of my students giving the talks, and each of them, again, I broke out, what are some of the concepts that we want to talk about, and the students got to pick the talks that they gave. They designed the slides themselves. We were editing together, went through, and but it was all them. It was all them giving the talks. Like I gave an intro talk at the beginning. I was like the MC, for the activity. Um, and then, but the slides, the main lecture slides were them. Next slide, please. And this is with the second group. Got the biotech logo on the right hand side, and so we actually use the sticker. We put them on our lab coats, and then boom, we had branded lab coats. So it's like we had a logo, student design logo, and then we had branded logo. We had a branded lab coat. So it was like the students were also excited. They're like, this is the logo for their company. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things, during the debrief. What did they learn from the experience? Creating an experience, teamwork, how to manage materials, public speaking, which again wasn't part of the original plan, but this was an outcome. Communication, making product, quality control, and then we also asked them about what wasn't on the list. And then next slide, please. And so during the debrief, we talked about, well, what worked. From my perspective, the student investment during the planning phase was amazing. Really made it their own. The students taking on the role of biotech mentors, both as subject matter experts, circulating, helping the students with questions. And then the student-led presentations and demonstrations. I knew from the jump. The students really loved the lab equipment demos. They themselves really liked the demonstrations. And then they picked up on something that like I knew that, like getting the word out for the biotech program, that, Onizuka Day, I was thinking this is great. But without me even saying it, they themselves were like, man, these middle school students, when they go to high school, they're going to be thinking about biotech. But also for the older ones, the students that were, seniors in high school, they themselves were thinking this is going to be the next generation of biotech students for the El Camino program. Improvements, again, as a discussion, timing. We ran out of time to stain the DNA gels, but we had examples of a backup. We had examples of pre-stained pictures of pre-stained gels. More practice for the PowerPoints. And then apparently other workshops also had paper chromatography. So they were letting me know, hey, and I was thinking, I need to, ahead of time, talk to other faculty and say, hey, what are the activities, so that we can maybe have a little bit less overlap. But clearly ours was the best paper chromatography, because it was biotech chromatography. And student suggestions, lower right-hand corner. These are word for word things that that they were writing on the board at the end of the activity that then we talked about in class. Having more demo kits for the biotech mentors, having more sodium chloride in the beakers, um, maybe tweaking the chromatography setup so that can be more appropriate for smaller hands. And then letting the students know that they can take everything except for some key items, and then using language that is more appropriate for sixth graders in terms of, like, say, maybe less jargon. And then they were thinking, hey, maybe we can get a Polaroid camera to share with the students. And again, I want to thank the Bioscope team, because uh, the experience that my students had, the experience that I had, just put another way, what the students, what the experience the students had is what I was hopeful that my students would have someday as part of a biotech program, and they had it, year one. So it was amazing, and it was wonderful. And that does it for me.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. What a great presentation. And So I know we're almost out of time. I mean, there might be time for one, maybe two questions. And also, we have some information to share just really quick before we do questions, and I'll put it into the chat. So if anybody's interested in doing this with us and going through our next trainings that are going to start happening late in the summer, and also the online trainings, I'll share links with you so that you can register for the recording and the course materials. So for the cast recordings of the accessible learning and universal design for learning. If you're interested and curious or want to join, there's several ways you can work with us. The Innovate Bio has several hubs, including a supply chain hub, and there's the link to go to our webpage, and that's also being updated. And also you can reach out to any of those of us on the Bioscope team, and here's our email addresses. We'll share those with you. I'll put all this into the chat. And then these are the links to the online recordings. So I will turn it over for questions. I'm going to turn it over to Ying-Tsu and Emily for the questions while I put the links into the chat.
So Eduardo, do you have any pictures of Onizuka Day? And maybe have time to put it in?